Welcome back to the LEC for the final series of Week 4 Spring Split. We're back here, minutes away from BDS versus Koi, but before that, congratulations are in order. Kaiser, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
GG on this quick series, I want to say, and very one-sided. How was it for you?
Yeah, I would say it was, I mean, especially the second game was pretty one-sided. I think the first game, we had some troubles with the Olaf. I think maybe we should ban it in second rotation because we had like Nautilus Annie, which are both like really CC reliant champions, right? And the Olaf, at one point, like in mid lane, I think he almost won before us. And I was like really worried at that point. But yeah, I think both Wukong really carried us in that game.
Yeah, it was the Bo show. We're all talking about this, and I think
that
that's what
one
it was about
flank he had where he hopped over the wall around the mid-river was absolutely insane. And then also his Lee Sin in this game, this play was so sick. You probably couldn't have seen this unless you were tapping over to him, but this is actually his pro view. And he has the sweetest flash away when they get to super low HP to reset his auto before he comes in. Like, this is crazy.
Okay, yeah. I actually didn't see this, but now looking at it, like
sick.
he's for sure Chinese.
And the fact that and the fact that 113 couldn't quite flash away from the Sonic Wave 2 cost him his life in that exchange. But literally the entire match was just Bo killing everyone. Did he like get like really hyped in game as this was going down?
I mean, he's always like this. Honestly, like even if he's like 0-10 and he's playing Wukong and like he's 1v5 in enemy territory, like he's always like, we can go, we can go, we can go. I'm strong, I'm strong, I'm strong. You know, like it doesn't matter how he's like doing. He's kind of always like this, and when he has his good games, like it just looks like this, where he just like,
oh my god.
He doesn't care about anything, he just goes in and, yeah, skill checks people.
And it's amazing here because Vitality will go further than they did in winter, passing the first round, at least here, of course. We'll see what happens for you guys next week and who you will face, of course, after this series. But tell me about the improvements on the side of Vitality. Did you feel stronger than in winter? How did it play out? And your thoughts going further here in spring playoffs?
I mean, for sure, we improved a lot. Like, I think not only because Upside came in, like I think like he fixed a lot of our problems, like regarding communication, especially. Of course, our communication is still an issue, I would say, especially like in hectic games where the solution to some problems is not obvious, right? But I think like especially early game, he's helping us out a lot. Like he's giving us direction in where we should go and what we should do. And yeah, I think that's like the biggest thing that came in, I guess, like with Upset. Of course, like Upset in general, like super insane player, plays teamfights insanely well, right? I think that's like a huge bonus as well. But in general, I think our top side is also and me as well. We are like just playing better. I think we had like pretty rough spring. I think we didn't have the best games, right? And we just didn't mesh well together, but right now I think we're really clicking together and just playing well better. And
really excited to see what Vitality is going to be like in playoffs and who is going to join you guys also in playoffs. BDS, Koi, the next series we have on our hands. And their thoughts on this? BDS yesterday dominated the way we expected them to versus SK Gaming. It came down to the early game, and I think it might play out similarly today, but tell me about what you thought on this series from BDS.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think BDS have been a team that always sort of impressed me to the later game. Like if Crownie has some sort of like scaling pick on the bottom side of the map, I think that this team is always looking good because the big switch, I think, from winter split to spring has been sort of the glow up, I think, of the mid jungle 2 versus 2 from BDS. I think they had some moments back in winter where they looked like somewhat exploitable, but they've looked way more consistent throughout this. You know you're going to get reliable carry on the top side of the map from Adam as well. And a lot of these engages from SK, I think maybe in the first game going a little bit deep. I think BDS kited well back off of them. It wasn't like BDS were just cruising from minute 1.
Yeah.
They played a lot of the fights really well to get the lead.
Would you say that they've been challenged, Kaiser, yesterday and also during the split total because they exceeded expectations? Oh, okay, hold on.
Oh my god, what?
What is this?
An actual carriage. Okay,
Laure?
Going old school.
BDS Walk-ins. No, but... Fantastic. Incroyable.
I hope they keep the wigs on.
I want them to keep the wigs on under the headset. I think it could be amazing. But yeah, guys, I was asking about BDS. Their improvements from winter to spring and how strong they look right now.
I mean, they for sure look really strong. I think especially like their consistency is like what stands out to me because I think a lot of teams in the LEC are like really inconsistent. Like Koi, G2, they have really high highs, really low lows, right? And I think you saw that in the series yesterday, like Koi, G2, like it was just super coin flippy. But I think like BDS is one of the most consistent teams. Like they have decent macro, like they have really solid players, right, who don't like just randomly int it. I think like Adam especially has had a really good season. Like he's been solo killing people left and right. He's been the rock, right? And yeah, I think like also their bot lane is just playing super well. Like Crownie is seemingly always ahead in the early game. I'm not sure how he does it, you know, but I think he's playing really well.
Yeah. One of the best bot lane we have in the league here. You were talking about G2 hit or miss. It was miss yesterday. I think Koi ending 7th, defeating G2 yesterday. A bit of underperformance on the side of the Samurais, but I want to give credit to the mid jungle of Koi especially, and Malrang playing to what we were expecting from him, basically.
Honestly, so many of these fights came down to like really micro things that Koi just had the edge in a couple of these engagements, and they stacked up on top of each other, giving them pretty comfortable leads in the game. Like, this was a really tough win, I think, every single time with how the fights ended up playing out, but I was really impressed with what I saw like you're talking about with the mid jungle, and then later in the game too, closing things out convincingly.
Kaiser, how do you think this one is going to play out today when you think of BDS being super strong and aggressive and Koi, given the form that we saw from them yesterday?
I would say that I mean, it's hard because you don't know which Koi is going to show up, right? I think BDS probably has an advantage, I would say, because they kind of knew what they have more advantage through seeing the games from Koi than Koi has the advantage from seeing BDS's games, because I think BDS's games have always kind of looked the same, I would say. Like they get ahead through bot lane or maybe top lane, right? And they have the same drafting style a lot of the times, but I think Koi kind of switched it up during the season. Like that's this like phase of Kaiser Rakan, right? Now they picked like Syndra mid lane, stuff like this, right? I think it's pretty interesting, and I think BS should have an advantage just because they maybe they figure out the draft, like how they can beat this Syndra mid lane, gank mid lane style combo with Malrang coming in as well, right? I think I would favor BDS.
All right, favor BDS. We'll see how this one plays out. Kaiser, thank you so much for joining us on your insights, and congrats again on taking down Astralis.
Thank you.
And Vedi, back to you for the game.
Thank you very much. Great to hear from Kaiser, as always. And we see Vitality be the first team make it to the playoffs in the top side of our double elimination bracket. They'll be joined by one of the two teams in front of us today, Vedius.
Yeah, I think many will be surprised that one of these teams will not be a G2 after Koi's pretty convincing, well, I say chaotic win yesterday. It was interesting to me that so much of the conversation was more about G2's underperformance than it was about Koi's success. And it does make sense considering how popular G2 as a team is. But eyes will be on Koi to see if they can maintain that performance, because we heard it from Kaiser. It seems that BDS are the favorites coming in.
So let's get into the draft. BDS on the blue side, they had the option to pick as they were the highest seed coming out of the regular season, and they lock in blue. Has been predominantly the side you want to be on throughout the course of 13.5, and it seems now 13.6 as well. Rakan and Annie immediately removed from that support pool. Of course, Annie can go towards mid lane as well.
Rakan, something that we often see banned away by BDS, something that they don't really want to have to deal with. We saw high priority on the Renata from BDS yesterday, that counter-engage tool, something to offer a little bit more protection for Crownie. But we also saw Labrov being very aggressive with how he utilized that ultimate as well, flashing over walls, trying to set up plays for his team, and ultimately looking for picks. The bans have come through thick and fast. BDS have a very clear game plan, and it is limit Szygenda's options here in the top side of the map, taking away the Jace, taking away the Gnar, perhaps to trying to force Szygenda onto something like the Cassante, which we know Adam has many options to answer.
Could look towards one of those AP top sides as well. Kennen, we saw from Szygenda yesterday. Rumble into Adams. Olaf didn't work out too well either. There's the Zeri immediately locked in for Crownie. Down towards the bottom lane. We continue to be plagued by Zeri, Lulu, Lucian, Nami.
Oh, you talked about it. The immediate lock-in of the Kennen from Koi. You assume that this is going to go into the top lane. We haven't really seen that much flexibility in the Kennen. For those old school fans, you'll know that Fnatic used to be able to try flex it into the bottom lane as well. But we expect this to be top with the Apheliios coming out from comp. what I thought was interesting from BDS is their game plan so far seems to be limiting a lot of what Koi have defaulted to with the high priority on the Zeri for comp, something that he's very comfortable on and very safe in lane, along with making sure that Szygenda has one of these safe top sides with the Jace and the Gnar. By removing all of these options, they're forcing a new image from Koi, and it seems that they're already to go for it, and they're prepped. The question is, will we now see the Thresh alongside? Or will we see something like the Nautilus, perhaps? Or in fact, maybe they'll just want to lock in their jungler here to answer the Vi. It looks like that they will be locking in that Thresh. So nothing too surprising for Trymbi. We did see the Thresh come out from him yesterday. A very solid performance from him. But this first half of the draft, very fast. Both teams have a very clear idea of what they want to do. And as we move into the second half, BDS likely looking for some of those jungle bans, with Koi looking to, I expect, remove things like the Olaf specifically, maybe even the Malphite if they're worried about that engage tool into things like the Apheliios.
I mean, they're so on the same page as you that they've already taken the Olaf out of the pool with the first rotation bans. They will instead look towards the mid lane a little bit with that Ahri. There's the jungle focus from BDS with the Wukong being removed. Maokai as well, as you say, very likely to be BDS's final ban. Now, Koi could look up towards that top lane and say, well, we don't really want Adam getting his hands on maybe even something like the Darius just because of how experienced he is on that champ. I'm not hugely confident on Kennen Darius matchups, but we'll see how confident Koi can be as the game does commence. There's the Malphite ban, and now Koi look to their jungle, and they will lock in the Trundle.
I love Trundle, man. I think that this champ has been so underutilized given the prevalence of things like Sejuani in the current meta, but also remember that Trundle was popularized largely by Zanzara. I think it was last year as an anti when Viego was the menace in the jungle, right? He was so good at dueling the Viego in the early game that it became very difficult for Viego if he ever tried to go for any 2v2s or 3v3s. And I think the same can be said for Vi. When you come into those early skirmishes, Trundle just offers so much that as long as you're mirroring Sheo, you have a lot of options. Now, we will be seeing the Jarvan in the top side of the map. This is something we saw over in the LCK, and something that isn't that uncommon as an answer into Kennen, often putting things like the Aerie into the runes and then going for an early Emax so that you can actually poke and trade against the Kennen with a good all-in power, because especially when Kennen has no flash, somebody that you can lock down and just build and itemize well into while mitigating a lot of his burst.
Also means that in later teamfights, if you just cataclysm the Kennen, you've done your job. It's a bit like often on Rakan, your entire job is to stop the Kennen getting into a fight. Here, Adam's entire job can be just to stop that Kennen from being able to get on towards the backline, then you just play front to back with the rest of your team. Koi round out that composition with an Akali BDS alongside that Jarvan locked in Syndra for the mid lane.
Now, I will say, I think Akali can be a very good matchup into Syndra. Typically, mages are where Akali thrives. Her mobility makes it so obnoxious for them to land their skill shots, specifically someone like Syndra. I will say, though, that there is a lot of lockdown when you pair up the Vi with the Syndra. And personally, I've been a critic of Larssen's Akali over the years. I think that when you compare it to his control mage performance, it's not been one of his strongest champions. But we'll see how he's able to perform against Nuke today. Into a Lulu, Akali can be that much harder to execute. But I think that with the way in which BDS have drafted, they have a pretty solid team fight composition. They have a lot of single target damage when you pair alongside the Vi and the Syndra, but the team fight power of Zeri cannot afford to be underestimated. It's largely going to come down to how effective can Szygenda be on these flanks and how threatening can Larssen be when getting onto the back line.
And although Larssen, as you say, often known for his control mages, he's actually only brought out the Akali once this year, was in that game against G2 where he went 5-0. 100% win rate on it. Let's see if he can continue that in this game. BDS and Koi fighting for that playoff spot to match up alongside Vitality, get into the top side of our double elimination bracket. And both of them having very strong performances over this weekend. We'll see who comes out on top today. Koi have Vamosed onto the Rift, but they're just holding a normal line of scrimmage here. The Demacian standard being used by Adam just to scout out
the runes, Medic.
Oh, I can do that, yeah?
So we can talk a little bit about this Jarvan in the top lane. As you can see, the Aerie being picked up. This is something that we've talked about in the past. For those unfamiliar, you often go for, I'm not sure if it's the E max or if you just put a few points in the E and then you then continue to max out the Q. But the idea is that when you pair the E alongside the Aerie, it's something that just gives you a lot of harass in lane, makes it easier to farm at range as well, and also it just makes it easier to match into range champions, especially things like the Kennen. And then you can itemize things like the Merc Treads, and you can even see starting with the Doran's Ring to give you a little bit more poke and power. This is something that we've often seen in support, but also an old school answer into the Kennen on the top side of the map as well. Meanwhile, in terms of the rest of the runes on the Rift, you can see Electrocute, Phase Rush for Sheo. Ultimately, nothing too crazy. Aerie also being picked up by Szygenda as well. So we'll get into this early laning phase. Something that we did talk about in the draft was how junglers like Malrang on the Trundle will likely want to try and match Sheo. Getting that early investment on where the enemy jungler is starting has been really important. We saw BDS invest the early ward over towards this. Let me bring up the minimap real quick. Get this. This early vision to just give a bit of insight. They've also dropped this early ward to see if this Trundle is looking for any sneaky invades or trying to do anything in the early game. And ultimately, Sheo has been able to avoid that mirror, so now he can be on opposite sides of Malrang and not look for any of those early fights.
Even the ward near the Razorbeak entrance for Sheo as well means that if Malrang had looked to try and get into this red buff area, all the avenues are covered. He'd have to flash across the wall, which is not something too uncommon for Malrang, but here he's decided not to do it. Instead, skipping his Gromp, now going to his red, and will be spotted on this ward. And so BDS have perfect information as to where the Koi jungler is pathing early on. Across the board, though, relatively even in this early game. Apart from in that bot lane, you can see Comp falling a little bit behind already, only at 1 CS. Went Cull first because he knows it's not the easiest lane to deal with, so just wants to try and scale up, and as the wave crashes in, he'll be able to answer back with a couple of minions of his own, but still a little bit of a hole.
Is level 3. We'll drop a ward on that blue buff to get a little bit of information again. In the early game, it's always about that battle of information between where the enemy junglers are. Seeing the blue is gone, this should let Trymbi and Comp know, be careful, likely going to be on the bot side of the map. You even saw a ping onto the bot side red, indicating that Sheo is likely to be there. What they don't realize is that he's actually hovering around mid right now. I like this adaptation from Sheo, making sure that Nuke is comfortable to push this wave underneath the tower, because this is where he's most susceptible to an early gank.
And we'll see Sheo and Malrang avoiding each other around.
Dive, I like this.
Twilight Shroud already down from Larssen. Sheo, Vault Breaker coming in. Larssen knocked up, knocked back, and shut out of the game. First blood over to Sheo.
Really clean play from BDS. You often don't see mid lane dives this early on into the game, but Akali, very weak early on. She's very reliant on levels in her Q to be able to really threaten and wave clear, but now Malrang has his eyes on Adam.
So no E for Adam right now. You can see the standard a little bit further back in the lane. There's the flash away. Flash forward from Szygenda looking for the stun, but underneath the tower, they just don't have the damage, as you say, Vedi, to cut through the Demacian Prince. Adam able to survive. Wave not in the best of states for him. Malrang can stay around to make sure that Adam can't step up really to clear out this wave too easily. That's exactly what he's going to do. Second ward, cleared again. Man, he's rich. He's feasting on these wards right now.
Adam is mad. He was like, surely he wouldn't do it again, right? And Malrang's like, watch me do it again.
That's the standard. You can't kill this, mate. Okay.
It reminds me of that SpongeBob meme. You don't want to watch me run to that rock. You want to watch me do it again. Sheo now making his way into the bot lane. No information there on his presence, but I like this early map presence from Sheo. Wants to provide some safety for the bot lane.
It's always the risk.
They're looking.
Trymbi could step forward, Vault Breaker. Trymbi flashes forward to dodge away from the Vault Breaker, but immediately is met with the polymorph. Crownie low, taking Comp will take him. Trymbi dashing away, but he just can't escape as Sheo manages to answer one back. Malrang is on his way down here, but the Gravitum stun not up in time, at least that route for Comp. In the end, a 1-for-1 trade in the bottom lane, Betty.
Do we say that was part of the plan, Medic? Are we going to go with the that was totally intentional, Trymbi?
I think the flash to dodge the Vault Breaker is intentional. The direction of the flash, a little suspect.
Yeah, production. If we can maybe also get a pro view of Trymbi.
The ward comes in.
Yeah. I
don't think he flashes forward intentionally. I think he's trying to flash and his mouse is there.
Maybe.
Because it doesn't get him anything. He just
because like, you can see that the flay ends up working out, but I think I agree with you. I think that flash is the wrong way. I think that was a misclick from Trymbi. A bit of a blunder, but they make it work at the end of the day. It does result in a 1-for-1. Larssen continues to interrupt the back. But yeah, an uncharacteristic mistake, something that we don't often get to see from Trymbi. But overall, not too damaging in terms of the overall outcome. Larssen trying to make Nuke's back as difficult as possible because he knows that Nuke does have the TP. Ideally, what Larssen wants to get is a push in mid-wave, and then as the wave is hitting the tower is when Nuke TPs in, and then that gives him a window to look for a roam. You can see if we actually pan over to the top side of the map very quickly, observers, there is this massive stacked wave, and that's exactly why, once again, Sheo is here. He's done a great job of just having his presence known on the map. Every time a wave is in an awkward position where his team might be in danger, or maybe there's an opportunity for a play, he's there to support. So big props to Sheo. He's been having a lot of map impact in this early game.
And something we've seen from Sheo throughout the entirety of Winter and Spring is this evolution into a jungler that just tracks the enemy jungler really well and is in position to bolster his team's defenses when needed, but also to find the attack when appropriate as well. In the bottom lane, Comp did burn both his summoners. Crownie did the same in that last fight. Labrov does have flash, but you always have to think about these one-for-one trades as it's not only about those kills, it's also about what the next 5 minutes can bring for either team. If Malrang comes down here, puts down a pillar, Crownie could be in a really bad state. But also, if Sheo gets to level 6 before those flashes are back up, it becomes very difficult for Comp and Trymbi to ever play up in that lane because Trymbi always has to stand back in position to lantern his AD carry out.
Very true. Very, very true. Junglers, as you rightly mentioned, already hovering around the spot side of the map. Pings are coming down onto this dragon. Now, Malrang knows that his bot wave has push, so he knows that they can collapse first. But look at Adam. This is what we call the Adam special. This is why he's a bit of a wild card player. He can be very unpredictable in his movements on the map, and he's making his way to contest this Drake.
So I actually think the ward up near the blue buff for Koi spotted Malrang as he came down here. He thought he was able to sneak between the vision, but that ward at the blue means that BDS were able to call for Adam to come down and then set up to steal this dragon away. In the end, really good map play from BDS. As you say, Adam, a little bit precocious perhaps, moving around the map as he does, but he can't really do anything in the top lane against Szygenda, so he's very willing to sacrifice a couple of minions to make sure that his team can get the first dragon of the game.
And just great timing overall from Adam as well. Szygenda was slow pushing that top wave, which means that Adam doesn't lose anything. Overall, great play. BDS have shown to us so far that they really prioritize these early dragons. Against SK was something that they wanted to heavily focus on. They were constantly the team that secured, I believe, every single dragon throughout that 2-0 that they got over SK. And it was something that basically allowed them to keep forcing fights around these neutral objectives, where I feel BDS has one of their biggest strengths. Now Malrang trying to force the flash out of Nuke.
Nuke has been slowed, but Malrang's just going to try and chase him down. The subjugate not enough as well, and with Sheo waiting in the wings, it was pretty easy for Nuke just to walk away from that one. Does take half his health bar for the trouble, and Larssen just farming up once again on this Akali. That bot lane for BDS, really their key point of power right now. You can see about a 20 CS lead there for Crownie, and so far in group stage, he's been having a pretty good performance as Crownie.
Decent, yeah, decent.
You know, 22 KDA, a lot of his team's damage, high gold difference at 14, and part of that is obviously Crownie being very consistent and playing very well, Labrov alongside him, but also, as you said, BDS liking to set up around this bottom lane, get the early dragons, get those early objectives, and get themselves on the board. Right now, they're looking for a play in the mid lane, though, as Larssen has to flash and dash to get to safety.
Good punish once again by Sheo. Larssen, that wave is a very dangerous position. Adam looking for an all-in here.
Goes in, gets a knock-up.
Say all in, my apologies. That wasn't quite all in.
The thing is, you can go all in and lose.
True.
You know? The only thing he didn't do was put the Cataclysm down. I just didn't want to form any new tectonic plates right now, but Szygenda will have to back away. Doesn't have the teleport right now. You can see, actually, Trymbi working his way up towards the top side here. Maybe anticipating a possible gank on Szygenda. It's not going to materialize, but Trymbi is here to perhaps look for a counter gank. Malrang's at his red as well. Yeah, I feel this Trymbi roam is very much I think my top lane is going to get dived, so I'm coming up here to try and defend it.
Yep.
In the end, it's not happening as of yet, although Sheo might make me eat my words as he does work his way up towards this top lane once again.
Adam trying to push this wave in as fast as possible. Szygenda looking to throw the ultimate out.
Cease and desist into the slicing mouse from Szygenda. Dashes away. The Cataclysm locking BDS in place. Malrang's going to try and turn back onto Adam, who flashes away. Sheo, his next target. He's battering them with the club. Looking for a home run, but at the moment it's only a bunt, it seems, as he's dived back on. Flashes forward onto Adam. Malrang gets it. There's one. Knocks him out of the park. He's looking for two as Sheo able to answer with one of his own.
You can see the power power of some of these early skirmishes going in favor of Trundle. The problem for Koi was that Szygenda was forced out very early. A good flash to create space between him and Adam. But the follow-up, not quite the way they wanted. Larssen now committing the ult.
Nuke still has the flash here, though.
Ooh.
Gets a good knockback there onto Trymbi. The hook hits Nuke. Could have flashed it. Decided not to. The ignite ticking. Not even needed. Perfect execution from Larssen and Trymbi.
It was so important for Nuke to dodge that hook. He needed to flash away from it, but he held onto it for too long. And Koi are able to punish. 3-3 now is the kill score. Koi have a small gold advantage, but a Herald was picked up on the backside for BDS. A pretty even early game overall, both teams going toe-to-toe. But have a look back at this. Szygenda had been taking a lot of poke early on in the fight. They see Sheo, who immediately commits onto Szygenda, and they want to one-shot him here. Adam committing the ultimate very early, but he doesn't have the E to follow up. A good stun from Szygenda means that Adam has nothing to really commit with. Then he has to flash away because he knows he's going to lose his life to Malrang. And it's at this point where Malrang's debating, do I stay? But the moment that Q lands, he's saying, no, we have the damage. But then again, look, Szygenda can't really offer much in this fight now. He's too low. He realizes that Sheo has the damage to kill him, so he's like, you know what, we'll just take the 1-for-1 and I'll back away.
And for the moment, game very much in a neutral state right now. The Dragon obviously over to BDS earlier. They have a Rift Herald as well, so neutral's going in their favor, Vedi. But Koi, even in terms of gold, slight lead for Sheo in the jungle, but across the rest of the map, pretty much equidistant for everyone.
Oh, interesting. I just noticed that Larssen deciding to go for the Sork shoes rather than Merc treads. I think against the Syndra, that's bold.
It is bold.
I also think that things like the Whimsy, there's a lot of CC that I think Merc treads would have been very valuable. But he's confident. He's saying that I need to do damage.
And they have so much burst if they can layer it on someone. I mean, slicing Maelstrom, Apheliios ult with the Infernum as well as Sheo looks for a little bit of trade here. Thresh hold goes down. Larssen looking for that E. Labrov still has the wild growth. Larssen going forward. Cease and desist. The exhaust going down as well. But now Koi have a numbers advantage instead. Crownie dives in. The lightning crash going forward. Crownie's got one. Oh, it's shooting season for Crownie. And Koi are his targets. Absolutely wipes them up as BDS slow play the fight.
Crownie just wipes the floor with Koi. Without any hesitation, he flashes, ulties in, and the rest of BDS follow. We talked about how they use these Drakes to find fights, and that is a beautiful example of how BDS have dominated so much of the competition. They put so much focus, so much priority on setting up fights around this objective, and really, the second that Larssen pressed that second E was the window that Crownie needed to commit to the fight. Look at this play. It starts off with a good E, landing from Larssen, but everyone now, it becomes a game of chicken. Larssen, Are you taking the second E, or are you going to come back? And the second he does, the all-in. They chain CC him, they put a lot of damage onto him. He's now forced back out of the fight, but at this point, Koi thinks we can win, and just look at Crownie, lands the W, ulties in the 4-man stun from Nuke. The setup from him, I missed it in the initial fight, but absolutely fantastic team play from the 4-man. Secures them 4 kills, they get themselves the Drake. And now BDS are in a commanding position.
Yeah, 2,000 gold ahead. Even though Koi were the ones that were looking for that fight, it really didn't work out well for them. Comp didn't have the best guns either. And overall, BDS very willing to pounce on that. Szygenda now looking to take this top tower. He has had the advantage in this top lane, kind of to be expected. But across the rest of the map, very much going in BDS's favor. Labrov and Sheo have been working so well together, just teaming up. Sheo can dash in, then you always have the polymorph or the shield to try and give him a little bit more safety. The Whimsy as well can speed him up if he's trying to chase down a target. And BDS are advancing their vision line here, Vedi. Getting a little bit deeper into the Koi jungle. Sheo, we saw that. Don't worry, it's not going to be immortalized for, forever. Perhaps in the end decides he doesn't want to go and traverse towards that blue buff.
I feel like the more I look at this BDS composition, the harder it is for Koi to play. Really a perfect team fight. This Lulu, I think, just makes things so difficult. The thing about Zeri is her itemization already makes it difficult to kill, right? Bloodthirster plus the
Immortal
Shilbo, that stacking together is already hard enough to get through. And then when you add on to the fact that you have a Lulu as supporting cast as well.
And overgrowth and overheal and anything to make your health bar as big as possible.
Yeah, and like that's just problem number 1. Right? Problem number 2 is, okay, let's say Szygenda finds a flank and Larssen's able to get onto the back line, right? you have Adam's ultimate that just forces you to use some of your mobility.
Larssen
Hang on a
locked up
second.
underneath the tower here. The scatter of the week is enough.
It's just clean.
Adam with the EQ sets up the play for BDS. The tower falls as well, and as you say, Vedi, it is just clean so far. Malrang trading here onto Adam, but Sheo and Labrov in a great position to catch out Comp, and they do exactly that. The polymorph Comp doesn't have an opportunity to walk away. And it's just so good from BDS. Koi caught unawares, it seems. There's 2 more players fall. And even though Szygenda was able to take a tower, he lost 2 for the good of it.
So basically what Koi just did was they stacked a wave in mid and they stacked a wave in bot. As they slowly pressed their vision deeper into the enemy jungle, with Adam, they created this collapse where they then shut down the mid lane, converted that tower, then moved through the enemy jungle into the bot side of the map where Comp was caught completely unawares.
Yeah.
And then they secured the bot tower as well. Just very clean map movements overall from BDS, kind of like min-maxing what they can do on the map within that space. They all reset. Now look, that top wave that was pushed in and abandoned, Crownie catches it. They can now push in mid like they've just done, and they're going to do the exact same thing. Look, they push in this wave, they move into the enemy jungle, they get this deep vision, and now the play...
Crownie core though, Koi able to find him before the rest of his team could join, and the play in their heads was perfect, but Koi kind of understand macro a little bit as well, so they set up to try and answer it.
That's correct. This is the thing. Koi recognized the one weakness in that is that they've left their AD carry isolated in the top lane, and they're able to find a pick, which will disrupt the flow for BDS. Let's see if they can get something back.
Malrang, you shouldn't face check this. BDS are all here. Malrang face checks, and even the Larssen can't save him. Szygenda locked up as well. There's a tower back there. Trymbi's going to have to flash away from the Cataclysm. And in the end, even though BDS were the ones found out to start, they still get 2 kills, and they will still get the Herald if they so choose. They'll lose their bot tower for it, but the gold lead still at 3,000 in BDS's advantage.
A bit of a weird situation for Koi where they make the right play in attacking Crownie, which is that isolated member pushing up a lane, but then they completely forget about the people that literally just pushed mid and then move into the top side Fog of War, and then they face check the river. Just ultimately a good play into a bit of a blunder from Koi. The good news is that they are able to cross-map that bot tier 1 tower. But again, like, you had information. You should have been aware that they were on the top side of the jungle. You should have taken the safe approach and moved towards your tower. And it's just an easy collapse from BDS. They get that initial kill onto the Trundle. Adam flashes in to ulti Trymbi, but Trymbi just flashes in response, so a trade of summoner spells. BDS will convert this into the top tower. Now what is the priority? The dragon once again. It has been very clear that BDS really want these dragons. Now the downside is that they do have a few ultimates on cooldown, but those cooldowns are not very long. 3 seconds for Sheo, 3 seconds for Nuke. And just at the right timing, look at that. TP in from Adam into the mid lane. 5 members here once again. The BDS coordination is on point today.
It really is. All on the same page, it seems. A 4,500 gold lead as Koi try and fight for the Mountain Drake. It would be Soul Point. Szygenda's going to try and walk his way all the way around through this tri-bush in towards where this control ward is. But this is the control ward you always have to place. He can blast cone though. He could blast cone into the pit. He's going to try that. Already the Dragon fallen. Szygenda going in with the slicing Maelstrom, but the knockback is absolutely perfect from Nuke. He stops Koi in their tracks. And even the Moonlight Vigil cannot find its mark. BDS now on the front foot, but Adam perhaps a little bit in reading a different book to the rest of his team, it seems. Crownie trying to get the damage down with the lightning crash as well. Sheo's already got 1. Another has fallen as Comp chased off towards his top side. Szygenda's going to try and trade onto Sheo, but Sheo is so tanky. Force of nature already complete on this fire. You can stun him, you can lock him up, but the scatter of the week will find Szygenda once again. Malrang fletches away, and in the end, BDS get the fight, get the Drake, and get everything they ever wanted.
BDS are just team fighting better than Koi. There's not much else to say. Just a great play from Nuke. Once again, his stuns have been immaculate this game on the Syndra. We got to see him play it against SK. We're seeing it again against Koi. And this is what we talked about. Like, they warded so well to compensate for the potential flanks. They knew exactly what Koi wanted to do. And as we get right into the fight, you look at these control wards that are covering the side flanks. And then watch this stun. If we can get a slow-mo from Nuke, as the flash in from Szygenda into the knockback, into the stun, the exhaust as well at the same time. Multiple members from BDS were stunned, but the follow-up just wasn't there. And then the second that Koi think, okay, now we need to disengage, Adam, perhaps a little over-eager, over-commits to this fight. BDS are really in a position to follow up, but this is the wildcard element that Adam does bring. He kind of sets up that follow-up team fight for his team, and then Sheo coming in over the wall allows for BDS to clean up the team fight. Great play from BDS. They continue to impress here in the LEC. And we heard it from Adam yesterday. He said in the interview, I feel like that it's a realistic dream for us aim for MSI. Right now, BDS is playing with that goal in mind, and it may very well be achievable for this team. Still a long way to go. Larssen on the flank.
Do you want to be here, Larssen? TP coming in from Szygenda as well. Okay, they're looking for a long flank, but tons of pings on Szygenda already. Sheo's going to lock him out. I wonder if he TP'd on a control ward. No, just a normal one, so they were just very hot on the trigger of spotting him. Maybe Sheo was in range to give vision on it. Immediately they back away. They can look for a little bit more though. The Lantern coming down. Malrang already caught. Szygenda on the flank onto Crownie. The slicing mouse from being used. Crownie stunned up, locked up, pulled back with the death sentence, and Comp will kill him off. Now Adam trying to do what he can, but he's fallen as well. It's a 4v3 in favor of Koi. But there are health bars on BDS. Nuke stacking up those splinters as well already at 99. Almost crested the 100 threshold, and Koi happy just to take 2 kills out of it, it seems, Vedi.
Koi not down and out just yet. I like the flank play there from Koi. They saw an opportunity with an overstacked BDS on that top tier 2. And even though BDS responded well, they then moved into the enemy jungle, and Szygenda was still able to find the flank that he was looking for. You see that pocket of vision that BDS still don't have. They're trying to get the execute onto Malrang. I believe he is able to get his ultimate out to just buy a little bit of time. You can see the amount of healing that he's able to get. And then Szygenda here, a 3-man ultimate, gives space for Larssen to dive onto the backline. Even though Szygenda dies, the polymorph, and you can see how annoying this Lulu is, but this then creates space as Crownie and Adam are left isolated. They get that initial kill onto Crownie. Larssen is then zoning Nuke and Labrov away, and they're then able to convert that onto a kill onto Adam, which means that Larssen doesn't want to overcommit with his ultimate, realizes he can't get any additional kills, and Koi, they'll be happy with that. In a losing position like this, you want to take what you can, maybe get a shutdown here and there, get a little bit of gold into your back pocket, but they still have a long way to go if they want to turn this game around.
See Nuke topping the gold chart right now, already over that 10,000 mark. Larssen down at 7,000 gold, a 3k lead for Nuke in the mid lane. This ward will spot Koi as they step forward. They're going to use the sweeper as well, but didn't use it as deep as perhaps they could have. In the end, this shouldn't really amount to too much. That ward will expire pretty soon, and in fact, might expire slightly before its sell-by date as they spot it coming back around. However, Dragon up in a minute here, Vedi. You can see Larssen up towards the top lane, trying to push out those waves. Does have the TP. Adam has his as well, though. And it becomes a little bit of a risky game for Koi to play. Where do you set up your vision? At the moment, BDS have invested everything into this bottom side. All of their control wards are down there. Do Koi look for perhaps a sneaky Baron because they know they can't fight around the next Drake? Or do you say, well, we have to fight. It's Mountain Soul. We can't let them get that. And therefore, put yourself at a bit of a disadvantage when it actually comes to the fight.
It's a tough one to call because you look at the map, but you can see the BDS just kind of control everything, right? And so whatever you try to do, BDS can respond. Remember, they can just leave Crowning alone to solo the Dragon, and the rest of them can actually answer the Baron. Szygenda, though, has snuck his way through. Comp now in danger.
Yeah, but Comp's already caught the Lantern. He's going to pull him out. Cease and desist. That is a very isolated Sheo. How long can he survive for? BDS going to try and collapse on towards him. He comes back out with Vault Breaker. Now Larssen and Szygenda down towards the bottom side. The slicing mouse once again. Malrang coming in, but Comp hasn't had the time to auto. Already Nuke has fallen though, and Koi have found a perfect fight in the river. But Crownie's still full HP. He's dodging, he's dipping, he's diving. It's all Crownie. But call him king, because he has been crowned with a pentakill.
Crownie pops off as he tears Koi apart once more. It looked like the best case scenario for Koi. It looked like a team fight that could have gotten them back into the game, but Crownie comes up clutch. You can see Szygenda with a great flank, the engage and the commitment onto Comp. He has the Lantern, Trymbi positioned perfectly, and then this forces Sheo to be completely overcommitted. Larssen can just buy time with the Akali as the rest of Koi tear Sheo apart. And you're then looking at Szygenda, dives in, doesn't quite connect onto Crownie, which means that he is just free hitting on the back line. He is left untouched. The hook goes onto Labrov. Larssen using his damage as well. The execute lose onto Labrov, which he flashes out of the way of, and then he gets the knock up as well, which means that now there is 0 threats onto Crownie, absolutely none, and he's not afraid of anything. Beautifully played from Crownie. Great awareness and great positioning results in a pentakill against one of the pentakill greats in Comp.
And one of the Pentacle greats in Apheliios as well, was known as 200 years for a reason when he first came out. It is a Zeri moment, but it's a Zeri moment played very well by BDS and by Crownie specifically. Baron now, well, it looked like it had been started, but the TP coming out from Szygenda. Koi will realize the Baron hasn't begun. They're going round for comp once again. Season the City tries to flash the Larssen there for him, but he's nuked before he can even get to it. Larssen shut down as well. Unending death here for Koi. Every time they step forward, they are met with the fist of BDS. And BDS a triple for Sheo and Baron in their eyes.
A complete wipe once again for BDS. What is there to do for Koi? They tried to get a miracle steal, perhaps. They did a good job finding small windows with which they could punish BDS's play. But after Crownie gets a Penta, it feels like all is lost. And it feels like that with this Baron, that will be the final nail in the coffin. BDS, 26.5 minutes in, looking dominant against Koi and looking to join Vitality in the best of fives.
BDS up till now, it's been like they've... Well, we'll have another look at this replay before we go into that. Comp, they see him on vision and immediately the goal call comes out.
Oh, yeah. Observers, thank you so much for highlighting that. It's just they see Comp one place, they see the rest of the team in another place, and they go, oh, look, that is a fish that I believe we can skewer. Easily caught. The damage as well from Nuke. And we talked about it earlier as well, how hard it is to play the Akali into everything here. If you're not given that space, if you're not given the freedom to be flexible, you get shut down so quickly. The follow-up continues from BDS. And it's just a one-sided affair. 24 kills to 9.
10,000 gold ahead as well. Feels like BDS have been doing a test so far in this game. They looked at the teacher, they say Koi, and the teacher knows they're finished. As, now they're looking to close in the bottom side of the map. Still no inhibitors down, Vedi. But with the Baron buff for 2 more minutes, Adam looking for a little bit more. The wild card has come to party. Larssen trying to get away, dodges out with the Twilight Shroud. A good hook is going to connect, but Sheo so tanky. Anathema's Force of Nature, Radiant Virtue, not getting through him anytime soon. Szygenda chunked out over the wall, and now BDS, having forced Koi back to the fountain, can push in 2 waves at once. Double cannons for them down towards this bottom side. No hope of Koi clearing out the wave. Adam's going to bring one more in the mid lane as this inhibitor falls down towards the bottom side. And Koi, licking their wounds, have to try and find something. Sheo goes forward. The hook. Oh, look at the damage on Trymbi. Nuke has fully stacked up those splinters. And Trymbi has to walk sheepishly back to the fountain. Koi still 5 members strong here, trying to defend, but I guess with no super minions, it's a little greedy for BDS to continue this push.
Koi doing what they can to hold on. Sheo just zoning Larssen away by himself. The poke continues from Nuke. Look at the chunk damage. He throws the ultimate. Malrang will be able to walk away with his life, though. Sheo.
Trymbi. Oh, the damage! A single force of will onto Comp, takes him down below half.
And here they go. That's forced Koi back. Sheo was able to catch the wave in mid. You can see Larssen trying to keep the wave away from the towers, trying to wait for the Baron buff to wear off, but it will not be enough. The ultimate now thrown out.
BDS have taken both the Nexus towers. They're looking for a little bit more of the fight as well. Adam keeping Larssen distracted down towards the bottom side. Szygenda absolutely atomized, and BDS find their win 1-0 against Koi.
Impressive. What else is there to say for BDS? I've been skeptical of BDS, you know? I feel like that their playstyle, eventually they're a team that will fall prey to the top teams in the LEC. Surely they can't keep this momentum going, but they continue to surprise. Other teams in the league have recognized them as being strong.
Yep.
And like you saw it here, this game was just so impressive. Against SK, you could argue, oh, okay, well, SK not having the best of performances. They're not the strongest team. But after Koi's dominance over G2 yesterday, it's hard to keep that criticism going. Like, BDS are looking clean. The way Sheo played the early game was fantastic. He was always in the right place at the right time. The way that he coordinated with Nuke, it was something that we were talking about on the Analysts desk, right? Where it feels like that mid-jungler is getting so much cleaner. But then the team fighting, oh my word, this team knows how to team fight. Crownie is definitely on form today.
And they're doing it on the same wavelength as well. You see Adam go in, Crownie immediately jumping over the wall. Even if it's likely to cause him to die, he trusts his team to follow up with him. Before we get to the death, though, let's listen in to the voice comms from Crownie's Pentakill.
Look, he's entering. Flash Apheliios, by the way, flash Apheliios.
Yep. I will ultim. Oh, I'm deep.
Looks a bit hard.
Go, help. Akali will go.
Go back if you can.
I will be fine.
Come to me.
Akali's on his behind as well.
together.
Kennen no flash. Kill Kennen no flash. Look on me.
I will take
Play with Zeri.
I have to play slow. I'm out.
Kill Akali.
Okay.
Nice.
No kill first.
Penta kill. Penta by the way.
Penta? Crownie is for you!
Let's go!
Go soul.
Okay, good job.
Maybe we can do both actually. Kennen not TP. Actually, he has TP.
Welcome back to the desk after this replay. The perfect amount of control and hype on the side of BDS.
I loved how the whole team is hyping up. He's like, go slow, go guys, chill, relax. I got a phantom, but like, it's no big deal, man.
And they had this, indeed, during this game. Massive control on the side of BDS here against Koi. Let's take a look at the draft first to talk about what both teams have in mind coming in today. And here I want to highlight the Kennen, especially on the side of Koi, because we were talking about this in Reddit check today. The fact that AP champions can be flexed sometimes, and picking Kennen so early, did we really know where it would end up going?
I mean, Ender and I were having the discussion backstage, and we're really just honing in on the Kennen being like, okay, so what if they put it top lane? What is it we're looking at here? What if they want to put it mid lane? Where is it really what we're looking at here? And I think that Team BDS was actually really clever at drafting around where this Kennen would go as well, because if you could draft a Jarvan top lane, then it's like, well, great, I'm playing into Jarvan. And then if you go into the Syndra, it's like, well, great, I won't really have the priority in mid lane then.
Yeah, it's kind of my opinion. I'm not really a believer in Kennen in mid lane. I don't think he has a ton of great matchups. I think he has some playable matchups, and the Q buffs certainly have helped him out. But Syndra, like, I was a huge Kennen player way back in the day. Syndra was always a pain in the mid lane. Now, for the top side of the map, like, you did see, like, Szygenda does get ahead in that matchup, right? Like, Jarvan is by no means like a super lane dominant counter pick. He does a lot of cool things like poking with the E, especially starting with the Airy and the Dorange ring. Yeah. But Kennen takes Taste of Blood to try and sort of sustain a little bit through that. The problem in that matchup comes if Kennen ever loses flash and jungler comes topside. So I actually thought after the initial gank happened where Szygenda sort of went in, tried to flash to get a kill, I thought that was going to almost destroy his laning phase, because the second Jarvan hit 6, there's a gank opportunity. And there was even a moment where she was playing around topside but didn't commit into the gank because he was really concerned about the counter gank, and that sort of allowed this Kennen to get through the lane.
I thought the early game was really interesting, but specifically because so much of the attention was allocated up towards that top side, which really spoke to as well for the side of Koi. Well, if we get Kennen ahead of the curve, we can team fight around him. But also on the side of BDS, well, they already have the job and they're really looking to shut it down, which also spoke of both teams' win condition. A lot of this game came down to who's first on the objective, who gets to fight around it. And I think that's where the Akali R5 comes in as a bit of a question mark, because they didn't have the priority to play around with, and when they didn't have the priority, they really struggled to be first on the objective to really set up their good team fights.
I think it's just really hard to team fight with what Koi actually drafted for themselves, because the only real engaged threat is going to be the Kennen. So you're kind of looking like, can Kennen find a flank? Can Akali find some kind of flank? Actually going to the team fights ends up being really, really tough for you. And also the fact that there is that exhaust onto the Kennen whenever a fight happens, or onto the Akali
as well.
I think that was exactly the right answer.
Yeah, and as soon as Crownie joins the fight, you can see it. No fear. You know, everything has already been blown of the enemy team, and it just goes to how much easier it is for BDS to team fight as well. Not only this, but they also have the late game avenue. So when you see your AD carry get ahead like this in the early game, you're just so happy.
Yeah, and look at this early game stats and everything that BDS usually is able to do in the early game, and how they can get the right opportunities, if I may say, because we were talking to Larssen yesterday, talking about the fact that their games keep on getting more bloody, and that they're more willing to take risk, let's say, when they play the game, but it backfires, and it backfired a lot here, and especially on top lane, GB, where you see isolated members from the BDS squad. I think Crownie dies, but this doesn't stop here, and it gives an avenue to BDS to come back and take the plane.
Yeah, so we have a clip here specifically that kind of highlights it as well. You can actually see it going into it. In this position, right now down towards the bottom side of the map, allocated in the mid lane is Comp, down towards the bottom side is Larssen as well, while the rest of BDS, well, they're actually going up towards the top side of the map. Oops, I forgot I can't do that there. But either way, it's actually a good pickup from Koi in the beginning. They realized that they can get a pick here. The problem that they didn't have now is that they're not really counting their members. They're also disrespecting the fact that they've just spotted them here. And this goes down to BDS being super, well, high priority of their objectives. The entire game of BDS is driven by the objectives. If you want to fight BDS, you need to get the objectives objectives, and they still stick around here. So despite losing a member, because they overload the map with members, they're able to get good, favorable fights. And keep in mind, Koi actually knew that there were members up here. They didn't know all 4 was here, but through the process of elimination, you should know that, hey, no one's actually mid lane, hey, no one's actually bot side, and should have drafted, or not drafted around that, but base your decision around that.
Yeah, honestly, I think this is a pretty common issue with teams where you'll find a pick and you'll be like, oh, we have numbers, we can kind of do whatever we want. But you see, a smart team like BDS is able to still find out, actually, we still have numbers in this isolated area of the map, and they're able to pounce on that, which I think is perfect.
And you can see it on the objectives here. BDS gets every single Drake because they get the first 2 Drakes, and quite often they get that because they also get the Rift Herald. Then they get this Rift Herald we just saw now because they overload the map for objectives. They say, we don't care about this one wave in bottom lane. We don't care about this one wave in mid where we just pushed in. We're just gonna hyper-focus objectives. And because they do that and get away with it, that BDS gets killed when Koi overextends and play into the hand, you end up in a scenario that causes you, when you get to the late game and Koi is suddenly behind, not only do you have to worry about, well, they're at soul point, the Drake is up, well, the Baron will be up at the same time, and BDS just gets to completely overload the map into which side they will play. So if Koi just continues to have a lack of objective control, they will falter to BDS because it's one of BDS' biggest strengths.
Yeah, perfect example of that. First reset in top lane, where does Adam go? It's running straight into the bottom lane and then TPing back lane to top after they get the Drake.
And I mean, BDS, when they have a lead, they don't let it go usually, and it makes me wonder, before the game, we were wondering, what do we think of BDS? Have they been challenged enough in the series they played against SK? Same thing was for Koi, in the sense that we don't know which side of the coin we're going to have when Koi is playing. What do we think now for BDS? Absolute domination, but how strong is the team, really?
I think I'm going to pace myself. I learned from my mistake yesterday. G2 won first game. I'm like, oh my God, Koi, they're just going to lose to another 2-0. So they, Koi, they bounce back here. But for BDS, I don't think they've been challenging groups at all. I think they continue to get away with the playstyle they have. I'd even say that they're better now than they were in the first round because Adam is actually not making the same mistakes where he got caught quite often, and that allowed the enemy team to play. For Koi specifically, I thought they're really good at having good reads against G2, but the problem is they're not having the correct reads against BDS right now. They're on the different side of the maps. They're playing into their hand. And if they don't really change that up going into the next game, then they will just lose to the same playstyle that BDS brings to the table.
They will be switching side, playing on the blue side. For game 2, we'll see if Koi can bounce back here in this series, as BDS is leading 1-0 so far. We'll see you after the break.
Breaker coming in, Larssen knocked up, knocked back, and shut out of the game. First blood back there onto Trymbi. The hook hits, Nuke could have flashed it, decided not to. The Ignite ticking, not even needed. Perfect execution from Larssen and Trymbi. Have a numbers advantage instead. Crownie dives in, the lightning crash going forward. The 4-man stun from Nuke. Crownie's got one. Oh, it's shooting season for Crownie.